A man in Arizona claimed to reach 114 years old by eating 5 simple foods every day of his life, and a plant that seniors in one of the longest-lived communities on Earth have consumed for thousands of years spent most of the 20th century banned by the United States government. If you are over 60 and focused on healthy aging, this story changes everything you thought you knew about longevity foods and about a nutritional gap that may be quietly working against you right now. Bernando LaPallo lived in Mesa, Arizona, and when reporters, the BBC, and curious doctors showed up at his door wanting to know how he still walked, talked, and thought clearly past 110, his answer never changed. 5 foods. That was it. 5 foods his father, a Brazilian herbalist, drilled into him as a boy in Vitoria. But the longevity mystery runs deeper than one man's diet. Halfway around the world, an entire population has been eating a different plant, hemp, for over 3,000 years, a plant so controversial that the U.S. government effectively outlawed it in 1937 and kept it off American farms for nearly 50 years. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what that plant is, what the peer-reviewed science says about it, and whether it deserves a place on your table. The man who said he was 114. August 17, 1901, in Vitoria, Brazil, that was the birth date Bernando LaPallo gave throughout his life. His father, Bernando Sr., worked as a herbalist and physician, and the lesson he hammered into his son from childhood was blunt: take care of your body, and it will take care of you. Around age 5, the family relocated to the United States, and LaPallo spent decades moving through Philadelphia, Harlem, and Jackson Heights in New York, before finally settling in the Mesa and Tempe area of Arizona. A 47-year marriage to his wife Georgette anchored his personal life, though he outlived her, a second spouse, and 2 of his 3 children. ABC15 Phoenix sat down with him on his claimed 110th birthday in August 2011, and he told reporter Susan Casper the 5 foods that had kept him alive: garlic, honey, cinnamon, chocolate, specifically raw cacao, and olive oil, every single day without exception. What went alongside those 5 tells you just as much about the man. Sardines and salmon appeared on his plate about 3 times a week. Blueberries and mushrooms showed up regularly, and sweet potato and avocado rounded out the rotation. Echinacea and apple cider vinegar were daily staples too. Olive oil doubled as his skincare, and his exact words to interviewers were, "Use olive oil on your skin, rub your feet, rub your arms, you'll never rust." Olive oil doubled as his skincare, and his exact words to interviewers were, "Use olive oil on your skin, rub your feet, rub your arms, you'll never rust." The list of things LaPallo refused to touch ran just as long: red meat, hot dogs, French fries, alcohol, tobacco, coffee, and he insisted he never once swallowed an aspirin in his entire life. When people pressed him for the secret, his answer stayed the same every time. "It's all about obedience and moderation. That's the story. I have been doing everything my daddy told me to do all these years." 2 self-published books carried that message to a wider audience, the first titled Age Less, Live More: Achieving Health and Vitality at 107 and Beyond, and the second, Beyond 100, How to Live Well into Your Second Century, released just before his claimed 114th birthday in August 2015. Earlier that year, on March 18, the BBC aired a documentary called Eat to Live Forever with Giles Corran, and LaPallo appeared in it. December 19, 2015 was the day his story ended. According to his granddaughter Erica Chamberlain, LaPallo simply went to sleep with no chronic illness, and his heart stopped. The age controversy. On this channel, we do not bend the facts to build a better story, and that matters right now because LaPallo's age claim did not survive scrutiny. No recognized body ever verified him as a supercentenarian, not the Gerontology Research Group, not Guinness World Records, not LongeviQuest. The Gerontology Research Group went further and placed him in their file of incomplete, exaggerated, or fraudulent age claims. 1910, not 1901, that is the birth year the U.S. Public Records Index carries for him. Census records analyzed by Robert Young, the senior researcher at the Gerontology Research Group, point to a birth year around 1908. And across different interviews, LaPallo himself offered 4 different years: 1901, 1908, 1909, and 1910. When CBS New York pressed his granddaughter about the discrepancy, she admitted the family holds no birth certificate and blamed a Social Security clerk in 1930s Florida, along with a Brazilian birthplace that, in her words, was leveled long ago. The gerontology community's accepted estimate puts LaPallo at 105 years old when he died, possibly as old as 109, but not 114. The Gerontology Research Group also flagged a conflict of interest. LaPallo started claiming a 1901 birth date during the same period he promoted longevity and lifestyle products. None of that erases what he accomplished. Walking under your own power past 105, speaking clearly, keeping your memory sharp, that is still extraordinary by any standard. But 105 and 114 carry different weight, and you deserve to know that distinction. The plant America made illegal. LaPallo's longevity was genuine even if his exact age was not, and that raises the next question in this story. While he ate his 5 legal foods in Arizona, the United States government had already spent decades crushing a different plant that other long-lived populations around the world relied on for centuries. That plant is hemp. Before you reach for the remote, let me be direct. This video is not about getting high, and we are not promoting marijuana. Hemp and marijuana grow from the same species, Cannabis sativa, but the gap between them is enormous. Less than 0.3% THC sits inside industrial hemp. You could eat a truckload of hemp seeds and the only result would be a very full stomach. What we are talking about is a seed, one of the most nutritionally complete plant foods ever studied, and for most of the 20th century, growing it on American soil was a criminal act. How hemp went from patriotic crop to public enemy. 1619 is the year the Virginia Assembly at Jamestown did something unusual. They did not just permit hemp farming, they mandated it by law. Every colonist had to grow it. Between 1631 and 1706, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Maryland, and Pennsylvania all passed their own mandatory cultivation laws. And by the 1850 census, over 8,300 hemp plantations of 2,000 acres or more dotted the American landscape. George Washington planted hemp across all 5 of his Mount Vernon farms. Thomas Jefferson cultivated it at Monticello and Poplar Forest, had Chinese hemp seeds smuggled out of China at the risk of execution under Mandarin export bans, and built an improved hemp break for processing the fiber. Mount Vernon and Monticello's own historians confirm every one of those details. 2 popular claims about hemp and the founders, though, fall apart under scrutiny. That famous Jefferson quote, "Some of my finest hours have been spent on my back veranda smoking hemp," is a fabrication that appears nowhere in his writings, according to Monticello's own researchers. And the Declaration of Independence was not written on hemp paper because the engrossed version sits on parchment, which is animal skin, while Jefferson's rough draft used Dutch paper that conservators believe came from flax or linen rags. One man dismantled hemp's place in American agriculture. Harry Anslinger became the first commissioner of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics in 1930, appointed by Treasury Secretary Andrew Mellon, who happened to be the uncle of Anslinger's wife. Before 1933, Anslinger had actually downplayed cannabis dangers, but that changed when alcohol prohibition ended and his bureau suddenly needed a new threat to justify its budget. Cannabis filled the void. His congressional testimony left no room for subtlety, and his exact words to Congress are on the public record. There are 100,000 total marijuana smokers in the U.S., and most are Negroes, Hispanics, Filipinos, and entertainers. Their satanic music, jazz and swing, results from marijuana use. He also declared marijuana, quote, "the most violence-causing drug in the history of mankind." William Randolph Hearst's newspaper chain added fuel from a different angle. Reaching roughly 1 in 4 American families, his papers ran sensationalized murder weed headlines and deliberately substituted the Mexican-Spanish slang marijuana for the familiar words cannabis and hemp. The effect was calculated because most Americans had no idea the terrifying new drug splashed across the front page was the same crop their grandparents had planted. All of that culminated in the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937, signed into law on August 2nd and effective October 1st. Congress could not outright ban a plant under the 10th Amendment, so they strangled it with taxation instead. Registered handlers paid $1 per ounce, but unregistered transfers cost a crushing $100 per ounce, backed by penalties of up to $2,000 and 5 years behind bars. Convictions followed within weeks. Samuel Caldwell drew 4 years at Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary. Moses Baca received 18 months, both sentenced in Denver, and Anslinger showed up in person for the photo opportunity. Only one medical professional testified during the hearings, Dr. William C. Woodward of the American Medical Association, and he opposed the bill. Congress rewarded him with aggressive cross-examination. And then came the contradiction that tells you everything about how this law worked. Just 5 years later, in 1942, Japan severed Philippine and Indian fiber supplies during World War II, and the very same government that had criminalized hemp released a USDA film titled Hemp for Victory, begging Kentucky and Wisconsin farmers to grow it for the war effort. Compliant farmers received draft deferments, and by the end of the war, roughly 375,000 acres of American hemp had been harvested. The moment peace arrived, hemp went right back on the banned list. The USDA went so far as to deny the film ever existed, a position they maintained until copies landed at the Library of Congress on May 19, 1989. 1970 brought the final blow when the Controlled Substances Act, which formally classified drugs into 5 schedules based on abuse potential and medical value, dropped all cannabis, including industrial hemp carrying virtually no THC, onto Schedule 1 alongside heroin. American hemp farming stayed dead for close to 50 years. Pilot programs returned under the 2014 Farm Bill, and the 2018 Farm Bill at last legalized hemp containing under 0.3% THC. What makes hemp seeds a longevity food? If you are over 60, here is what makes hemp seeds worth your attention. Because the nutritional numbers are striking and the science is finally starting to confirm what traditional cultures figured out long ago. Roughly 30% of a hemp seed is oil and another 25% is protein. All 9 essential amino acids show up, which earns hemp a rare distinction as a complete plant protein. One 30-gram serving delivers about 10 to 11 grams of protein on its own. That matters more than most people realize, because one of the most underappreciated threats to healthy aging is sarcopenia, the progressive loss of muscle mass and strength that begins as early as your mid-30s and accelerates after 60. Adequate protein intake, particularly from complete sources that deliver all essential amino acids, is one of the primary nutritional strategies researchers use to slow sarcopenic decline and preserve the functional independence that determines quality of life in your later decades. Among those 9 essential amino acids, hemp seeds are notably rich in arginine, which the body converts into nitric oxide, a compound that relaxes and dilates blood vessels. That is directly relevant to cardiovascular health in older adults, where arterial flexibility tends to decline with age. But the fat composition stands out even more. Hemp seeds carry an omega-6 to omega-3 ratio of approximately 2:1 to 3:1. And that ratio matters because the typical modern Western diet lands somewhere around 15:1 to 20:1. A large UK Biobank analysis tracking over 85,000 participants found that the higher your omega-6 to omega-3 ratio climbs, the greater your risk of death from all causes, cancer, and cardiovascular disease included. Chronically elevated omega-6 intake relative to omega-3 is also associated with higher circulating levels of inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein and interleukin-6, both of which are linked to accelerated cognitive decline and increased dementia risk in older adults, a concern that shows up in senior health research more than almost any other. Few plant foods deliver gamma-linolenic acid, or GLA, an anti-inflammatory fatty acid that usually shows up only in specialty oils like evening primrose and borage. Hemp seeds are one of the exceptions. On top of that, they pack vitamin E, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, manganese, iron, and zinc into every serving. Published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 2024, a double-blind crossover trial at the University of Manitoba tested hemp seed protein on 35 adults with hypertension and found it modulated blood pressure and ACE-renin biomarkers. Honesty requires the other side of the ledger too. A randomized controlled trial that appeared in Food and Function in 2026 confirmed that hemp consumption raised beneficial fatty acid levels in the blood, including ALA, GLA, and EPA. But over 4 weeks, it produced no measurable differences in cholesterol, blood sugar, insulin, blood pressure, or body composition. The nutrient profile holds up to examination. The mechanistic evidence points in a promising direction. Long-term human trials proving cardiovascular or longevity outcomes have not been completed yet. December 2018 marked the month the FDA designated hemp seeds, hemp seed oil, and hemp protein powder as generally recognized as safe. The GRAS designation that represents the agency's formal determination that a food ingredient is safe for its intended use. The global industrial hemp market reached $7.5 billion in 2025 and is projected to hit $27.7 billion by 2033. The longevity village where hemp is dinner. And this is where both threads of the story merge, because one place on Earth treats hemp seeds not as a supplement or a wellness trend, but as the centerpiece of the evening meal. Bama Autonomous County sits in the Guangxi region of China, and in some of its villages, the centenarian density exceeds 30 per 100,000 people, roughly 5 to 6 times the global average. The dietary staple keeping those villagers going is not garlic, not cinnamon, not raw cacao, it is hemp seed. Residents of Bama prepare what they call longevity soup, huo ma yu in Mandarin, a thick hemp seed paste cooked with mountain water and vegetables, and they sit down to eat it twice a day. Generations of families have eaten the same dish. Peer-reviewed evidence backs up the nutritional interest. A 2023 study in Industrial Crops and Products analyzed the metabolites in Bama hemp seeds and cataloged over 1,000 distinct compounds, among them 177 flavonoids and 156 phenolic acids. The following year, a study in the journal Agronomy showed that Bama hemp seed flavonoid levels topped those of 7 other Chinese hemp varieties. Chinese traditional medicine recognized hemp seeds called huoma ren or fire hemp seed over 3,000 years ago. The classical formula ma zi ren wan, the hemp seed pill, centers on them, and a modern randomized controlled trial published in the American Journal of Gastroenterology in 2011 validated that formula for functional constipation. Japan offers its own 400-year hemp story. Shichimi Togarashi, the famous 7-spice blend, has included hemp seeds since a spice merchant named Tokuamon invented the mix in 1625 in Edo, which we now call Tokyo. That blend was originally sold as herbal medicine. Japan's Okinawa prefecture offers a useful comparison point here. Okinawa, one of the 5 official blue zones identified by researcher Dan Buettner, shares several dietary features with Bama: plant-heavy meals, low-processed food intake, and strong community bonds. Yet Okinawa's longevity research benefits from rigorous demographic verification that Bama's claims have not yet received. Fairness demands the same scrutiny here that we applied to LaPallo. Bama does not appear on Dan Buettner's list of 5 official blue zones, and the individual age claims from Bama villages have not been validated by the Gerontology Research Group or LongeviQuest. Extraordinary claims still require extraordinary evidence no matter where they originate, what supercentenarians actually eat. All of this leads to the obvious question: what do the people who are verified to have lived the longest actually put on their plates? Their diets contradict each other at every turn. Jeanne Calment, the longest-lived person in recorded history at 122 years, consumed roughly 1 kilogram of chocolate every week until she turned 119, drank port wine daily, and smoked from age 21 to 117. And just like Bernando LaPallo, she rubbed olive oil on her skin, a habit strikingly consistent with the Mediterranean diet pattern that researchers have linked to reduced cardiovascular risk and slower cognitive decline. Kane Tanaka of Japan reached 119 on a diet that featured Coca-Cola, coffee, energy drinks, and chocolate, and she survived colon cancer at 103. Over in Italy, Emma Morano hit 117 while eating 2 raw eggs and 1 cooked egg every single day for 90 consecutive years. Sarah Knaus lived to 119 in the United States eating butterscotch sundaes, and her family pointed not to her diet but to her famously calm temperament as the real explanation. Across every verified supercentenarian, the common thread is not one particular superfood. Genetics, calm temperament, social connection, and moderate diets that lean toward plants keep showing up in the research. And his lifetime overlapped almost perfectly with the rise and fall of one of the strangest prohibitions in American history. George Washington and Thomas Jefferson grew hemp. American farmers cultivated it for over 200 years. The government banned it through racial politics and bureaucratic survival instincts, and communities in China kept eating it as a longevity food for over 3,000 years without interruption. The researchers described her genetic makeup as a privileged genome. Conclusion: Bernando LaPallo was probably not 114 years old. Yet Okinawa's longevity research benefits from rigorous demographic verification that Bama's claims have not yet received. A 2023 study in Industrial Crops and Products analyzed the metabolites in Bama hemp seeds and cataloged over 1,000 distinct compounds, among them 177 flavonoids and 156 phenolic acids. But the story he carries connects to something much larger, because this was a man devoted to plant-based foods, moderate habits, and obedience to his father's plain-spoken wisdom, and his lifetime overlapped almost perfectly with the rise and fall of one of the strangest prohibitions in American history. George Washington and Thomas Jefferson grew hemp. American farmers cultivated it for over 200 years. The government banned it through racial politics and bureaucratic survival instincts, and communities in China kept eating it as a longevity food for over 3,000 years without interruption. Hemp seeds will not carry you to 114, no single food will. But the science behind their omega-3 to omega-6 ratio, their complete amino acid profile, their arginine content, their anti-inflammatory compounds, and their micronutrient density is genuine and growing. For seniors specifically, the combination of complete protein that supports muscle preservation, omega-3 fatty acids that support brain health, and anti-inflammatory GLA that may help with the chronic low-grade inflammation that drives so many age-related conditions. That combination is difficult to find in a single whole food. They are legal, they are safe, and the FDA has declared them so, and they are sitting on your grocery store shelf right now. The real irony of this story is not that Bernando LaPallo ate an illegal plant. The irony is that he never could have, because the government made sure of that. And the people who did eat it, in a village in southern China where centenarians sit down to longevity soup twice a day, may have been onto something this whole time. If this was useful, hit subscribe and the notification bell so you catch our next video. And if someone you know could benefit from this information, send it their way, because the best health advice travels the same way LaPallo got his, passed down from one person who cares to another.